welcome. You're watching ET Now, India's #1 business news channel, and this, of course, is the special show that we're doing from the World Economic Forum here in New Delhi. We're at the cusp of very interesting times. The IMF has gone ahead and has cut the global growth forecast to 3.1%, citing key risks such as Brexit as well as economic stagnation. But how do things really stack up for India? The government has gone ahead on a complete reform overdrive. We've seen the government passing GST. There is a rate cut that we've seen coming in just yesterday. Inflation is under check, so are the twin deficits, and which is exactly the reason why the mood here at the World Economic Forum is very upbeat. India Inc. is clearly excited at the opportunities that they will see going from here on, and in fact are also betting on the revival of consumption cycle. But before we get you all those important voices from India Inc., let's first hear out from none other than Nirmala Sitharaman, the Commerce Minister, who does say that the 8% growth level is in sight. The government is going to undertake a whole host of reforms, including FDI, and will push the states to ensure that there is ease of doing business. She also says that Asia and South Asia will be the key drivers for growth as far as the world economy is concerned. Let's first hear out Nirmala Sitharaman.
It is not to be forgotten that it is going to be South and Southeast Asia which is going to be the engine of growth, engine of development, engine of all economic dynamics for the forthcoming future. And therefore this meet acquires a certain significance, and I'm glad that the World Economic Forum and the CII have focused on some very critical areas which actually matches up with what Government of India is doing under the leadership of the Prime Minister, whose single line forward is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. And when you're talking about inclusive growth, it's exactly that which we need to focus on, and therefore there is definitely a synergy between the focus of this meet as much as Government of India's approach to our economic affairs. You're talking about digital world and the digital role of digital activities which will enhance economic development. If your three-pillared attention is going towards mastering the fourth industrial revolution, talking about ease of doing business, or when you're talking about equitable growth, inclusive and equitable growth for a sustained future, all of this sits well with what the Government of India is doing. If you would only take the three examples, which are very current and pertinent to the way in which government is moving forward, you see that there is complete synergy between the agenda with which you are talking today and what Government of India is doing. You take the example of GST. The GST is going to bring on one platform and have, through the digital enablers, over 800 transactions, both goods and services, on one platform, and symbolically making India, not just symbolically, but making India a single market. If this is achieved only through the digital revolution in India, you will get the size and the scale of what we are talking about, the ease of doing business, on which using technology, opening up newer areas of activity, we are making states come on board with the center to make sure the state and the center together remove all the hurdles to making business do their activity in great comfort. The process is long-bound, but certainly it has commenced. The ranking, therefore, between the states has become a healthy competition, similar to the global ranking which India normally looks forward to. We want to improve our position each year, and therefore, what you're trying to achieve through this meet is exactly what the Government of India is doing through the digital revolution that we are trying to bring in, using technology to bring in transparency, remove corruption totally, so that ease of doing business also is facilitated and enabled.
But really, what more on reforms? The government is looking at a complete overhaul of a lot of reforms. Now that the Niti Aayog that was set up by Prime Minister Modi, now that they have scrapped the 5-year plans, a long-term and a short-term, a 15-year roadmap and a 6 to 7-year roadmap will be prepared by Niti Aayog. In fact, my colleague Gaurang Sinha caught up exclusively with the CEO of Niti Aayog, Amitabh Kant, on a whole host of issues, on beginning with rate cut and then talking about what the Niti Aayog is really doing as far as those crucial recommendations on strategic stake sale is concerned. In fact, Amitabh Kant also did mention that he seems optimistic that finally this time around the government will be able to meet the FY17 divestment target.
Very good. It will provide greater liquidity in the system. The country will create bigger demand. There will be huge focus on demand creation across rural areas. Added to that is growth in agriculture sector, and therefore good monsoon will give a big thrust. So I expect the economy to grow at about 8%.
Right. So a recent World Bank report has said that with increased technological productivity, there could be as much as a 69% cut as far as job availability for the new workforce is concerned. Is that a concern at all for you?
No. You see, India is a very large country. You can't go by these generic reports. India will grow for manufacturing, smart manufacturing in certain areas.
Correct.
States like Gujarat, Maharashtra, yes.
Absolutely.
But what about textiles? What about food processing? What about footwear, leather? What about construction? These are labor-intensive sectors.
My final question to you, sir, with the budget exercise coming in and now the plan non-plan distinction has been removed, you've got a vision document sort of format coming in. So how is that coming along? What is going to be your vision for the next budget?
It's coming around very well. Right. We're going to have a 15-year vision document. We'll have a 7-year strategy and a 3-year action plan, which will converge with the Finance Commission findings.
Right.
So we are bang on track.
So the government is working on a strategy, a long-term and a short-term strategy, but what are global investors looking at? We in fact spoke to General Electric. They are very bullish on India. In fact, not only are they working very keenly on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's pet project, that is Make in India, with them starting up a new facility in Pune, but they're also talking about investing heavily in the locomotive sector as well as infrastructure. So now, after the JV with Indian Railways, how does General Electric really see things with respect to India? How do the India outlook stack up for GE? I spoke to John Rice, the Vice Chairman at General Electric Global. Let's first hear out what he had to say.
India, if you look at the IMF forecast of slightly over 3%, India's growth rate of between 6 and 7 is one of the shining stars. I think there's nobody that disputes that. The question for all of us, and it's one of the themes of the conference, is what to do to maintain that growth.
Right. So when you're saying things will be on the global front will be more tough, what are the kind of challenges that you see for India?
Well, India's economy requires that the companies here export. For us, it's been something we focused on for a long time. 50% of what we build in India gets shipped to another place. So by definition, we are globally competitive here. And I think for India, that model has to work for everybody.
GE also has, gotten into an agreement with the Indian Railways, for a lot of projects. Help us understand, we are still witnessing a huge infrastructure deficit as far as India is concerned. So, how should the government look at stepping that up?
Well, obviously, the investment in rail is an important one, but I would also point to the continuing need for electricity, basic things like electricity, healthcare, clean water. There are several hundred million people in India that lack electricity. For them to be productive, for them to be contributing members of society, that has to change. And if you compare that with a place like China, there's only a fraction of the Chinese population.
Big companies are coming into India, but as far as the Indian companies are concerned, private investment here is still weak. What do you really attribute that to?
I don't know. I don't know enough about the situation here to answer that. I know from our perspective, we've between what we've spent in Pune, which is the most recent facility that we've built, and what we've announced in Bihar, it's $500 million of investment just in 2 manufacturing facilities. So we're not afraid to invest
Any more
here.
investment that you're looking at?
Always looking at investments. Not ready to announce anything, but we're always looking.
So we heard from John Rice of GE on a whole host of opportunities that they are going to explore in India. But how are economists really looking at things? They believe that going forward, domestic demand will propel growth for a country like India. But a key concern, of course, is going to be the reversal in the commodity cycle, due to which we may not see a lot of benefits that have come in for India in the last fiscal. They also believe that although the government's reform overdrive, including GST, will be transformational, but the kind of things that we will see from GST, once the standard rate comes into play, this could inch up the consumer price inflation. And in fact, we caught up with Geeta Gopinath. She's of course an economist at the Harvard University, on how does she really think things are shaping up for India, and what will be the key challenges that India is likely to face in the near term.
India is a bright spot in the growth firmament, and with global growth slowing down, what that would mean is that India's growth would come from demand coming from within India as opposed to external demand. Unless India increases its share in world exports, given that world demand isn't growing very much, we can't expect to see much growth coming from the export side, but we should expect to see it come from domestically from within India.
What are the kind of risks that you foresee for the growth as far as India is concerned?
I see a few, several of them which come externally. So I think the first is commodity prices. The fact that commodity prices have been low has been a real boon for India. When that turns around, even though it's not expected to go back to very high levels, when that turns around, that has an effect on inflation. That then has an effect on monetary policy. That has an effect on the fiscal deficit. And so right now India is in a sweet spot with respect to macro stabilization. But when commodity prices do turn around, I mean, that is a source of concern.
Yeah.
Yes.
Government has walked the talk on a lot of reforms, including GST, the bankruptcy bill. How do you see the Modi government's reform overdrive?
I think the GST is a great outcome. There is no ifs and buts about that. That is a transformational event for India. There's obviously going to be some uncertainty in the next year or two about how this plays out in terms of the central government's deficit, in terms of collections. But the whole idea of getting rid of all these taxes at the border, I think, is a big plus for the Indian market. I would say that the pay commission increases have a greater potential to have, kind of inch up inflation over many periods. With respect to the VAT, the GST, it could be more of a one-time increase in inflation, so it could be very transitory. And maybe that's, in that sense, is lesser of a concern. But the pay commission aspect is probably has more a source of kind of more engendering inflation.
So India needs to push its export competitiveness. That's the word coming in from Geeta Gopinath. But on that note, let's take a short break. Coming up on the other side, we get you views from India Inc. on what they really make of the rate cut by RBI, as well as how are they looking at the festival season that's approaching. Views from corporate world and India Inc. on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching ET now. This is, of course, India's #1 business news channel, and this is a special show that we're doing from the World Economic Forum here in New Delhi. Before we went on the break, we told you that we'll get you views from India Inc. Remember, India Inc. is extremely upbeat after the reform overdrive of the government. They believe that things will improve from here on. We've seen the worst is behind us, and they expect a pickup in economic growth and economic activity, and this mostly on account of the growth that we will see in consumption. In fact, we had a word with Suresh Narayan of Nestle on a whole host of issues. We began by talking about how he sees the rate cut, the kind of impetus that we will see post monsoon, and of course the kind of leadership position that we've seen Maggie getting after after they've come back in the market. So how do things really stack up for Nestle India? Let's hear out Suresh Narayanan.
Basically, I think the relationship with the FSSAI, I must say, is extremely cordial, very professional. I have a lot of praise for the leadership of the organization, right from the chairman to the CEO. I think they have brought about some winds of change in terms of fresh regulation. So I believe that it is all for the good, and things are moving clearly in the right direction. As a company, as I said, we have made ourselves much quicker in what we do, much more focused, and I think the team has learned what the power of being together is after a crisis of this kind.
My final question is, you've got the entire industry. I just wanted to get your sense on that. What are the sort of growth prospects you're seeing at this point, particularly with regard to the larger macroeconomic environment as well, where the RBI has also gone and cut interest rates?
Look, I think the overall economic scenario, certainly with the rate cuts and with the prospects of a good monsoon, are clearly positive for the economy. The buzz, and we've heard it at the India Economic Forum as well, I think is positive for India. It's one of the positive spots that we have across the world. I'm certainly optimistic about the future. It will take some time to ramp up, so it's not going to be automatically getting into double-digit growth. But I think we will start seeing, I hope, the progression of the consumer goods space in the coming quarters.
The final thing before I let you go, a recent World Bank report has said that with increased automation, particularly in manufacturing sort of sectors, there is a risk that the workforce could be cut by as much as 69%, particularly in India. Do you see that as a substantial risk? Will you see reduction in size of workforces going forward?
Look, let me put it clear. I can speak for the food industry. Absolutely. And for the food space in which I'm in. I think for us, every new product creates new opportunities in terms of sourcing, in terms of vendor development, in terms of distribution channels, etc. So, in fact, in my business, there will be creation of more jobs, and that's what I think the Honorable Food Processing Minister talks about food processing as being one of the key growth drivers for employment in this country, and I think she's right, because we can create more jobs and we can create more opportunities by processing more.
You don't see automation as something which will reduce jobs?
Automation will happen, but I think, Gaurang, the opportunities that happen in the downstream are clearly quite significant.
We're at the beginning of the festive season, and at this point of time, how do auto companies, how are they preparing? What is the kind of strategy that they are looking at? We also had a word with Pawan Goenka of M&M, and he believes that rate cuts from here on, we are going to see more rate cuts, and this is of course going to spur demand. He's also betting big on the festival demand going from here on.
I don't think anyone expected more than 25 basis points. In fact, many were not expecting it this time. So to that extent, it's going to be very positive. And I also see it as a sign of more to come. Perhaps not in December, but maybe in March, maybe in April, May. And therefore, it will certainly spur demand. And if you look at overall scenario of many positive things happening, they'll all add up. So by 25 basis point by itself is not enough, but if you add it to everything else, I think it certainly bodes very well for what might happen.
Many say that this is perhaps early Diwali cheer. As far as M&M is concerned, how are things looking this festive season, and what are the kind of preparations that are on at this point of time?
Well, certainly everyone is going into this festive season with a lot of optimism in all the businesses. Attracting tractor business, automotive business, both are looking forward to a fairly robust sales volume for this season. And we do expect that will happen given again the overall scenario that we have for demand generation. And therefore, we'll talk a month from now, but we think that we will have a good season.
So, how are you strategizing with respect to things, and what is your outlook as far as the monsoons are concerned? Do you think this time around things are good enough so that we will see at least the investment cycle pick up?
Well, I don't think we can combine the two that simply, but the monsoon has been very good. About normal monsoon, but more importantly, the distribution, both spatial distribution and temporal distribution, has been very, very good. And therefore, almost all areas, almost all crops have been have seen good sowing. And we would expect a good kharif output, and therefore, and going into Rabi, since there's been a lot of late rains also, going into Rabi, I think the moisture in the soil will be very good for the Rabi crop to be good. So I think in terms of agriculture, this has been about as good a scenario as one could have expected from monsoon this year. Now, how that will connect to investment cycle, I don't think we can directly say it, because right now investment cycle is under stress because of several reasons, not the least of which is capacity that is sitting idle.
Right.
It's going to take some time before the capacity fills up, and after that only we'll say investment cycle.
So, my last question: any new launches that we will see from M&M in this fiscal?
Well, we will always talk about launches when the time is right. Right now we are still sort of leveraging the launches that we have done in the past 12 months.
Right.
Well, a few more things will happen, but not the right time to talk about it.
I don't know. Nobody knows what's enough. But the step is very well taken, very welcome, though I've always been not shouting for rate reduction, as my colleagues have been in industry and the government. I've always said the Reserve Bank governor is the right person to decide what's good for India and Indian industry. Here it's with the MPC, it was a unanimous decision. So it's very welcome, and depends on how much of this is passed on by banks to the customers, etc., etc. So that's a longer story, and I don't have the time for getting into
So,
that.
just one more question. We're also at the beginning of the festival season. How do you see demand this time around, especially?
Hopefully it will be better, at least for my motorcycles. I don't know about others.
So Pawan Goenka as well as Rahul Bajaj are very optimistic on the festive season, but if there's one more company that's optimistic, that of course is Vedanta. We had a conversation with Anil Agarwal. Remember Kien and Vedanta, the shareholders for the companies have recently approved the merger, and Anil Agarwal believes that all the formalities for the Kien Vedanta merger will be complete by the end of this fiscal. We had an exclusive conversation. Remember, he's a co-chair here at the World Economic Forum. Anil Agarwal.
Kien Vedanta merger has been cleared, and help us understand what will be the final steps that will be required.
Yeah, it has approved by the shareholder. Now the court will convene the meeting, and after meeting is convened, is a regular process. In few months it
Will you be
will
able to finish it before the end of this fiscal?
Yes, I think so.
So also, the commodity cycle has been a little volatile for a year. While raw materials like coking coal have jumped, base metals like aluminium and copper have shown a little bit of a momentum. What's your view on where commodities are headed?
No, the worst is over.
That was Anil Agarwal. We also had a word with Naushad Philbs of CII. CII and WEF are doing this World Economic Forum together on a whole host of issues. We cornered him, including rate cuts, on his projections for inflation. Let's hear him out.
We've already seen a significant recovery in demand since the beginning of the year. And we are seeing it spread to more and more sectors. And I think this rate cut continues the previous policy of a low inflation, getting India to a low inflation, low interest rate regime. And I think it will only help the process.
How do you think the festival demand, this time around? Do you think we're witnessing a revival as far as consumption is concerned?
We do. Talking to different friends in different industry sectors, in consumer durables, in branded garments, in fast-moving consumer goods, everyone's saying that they've seen growth this year that is significantly better in the run-up to the festival season, significantly better this year than it has been in the last 3 or 4 years.
Since my first question was on rate cut, apart from this 25 basis point rate cut, do you see more in the upcoming year?
Well, my philosophy is very simple on rate cuts. It's because the whole issue is how do you manage expectations of inflation.
Right.
So if you expect a rate cut and don't get one, then everyone gets very worried. So my philosophy is don't expect a rate cut and be very happy when you get one.
All right, with that, we're completely out of time on this special edition that we're doing from the World Economic Forum. News and updates will, of course, continue on ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.